Hello everyone and welcome. This is Norm. Thank you for joining me again on this early spring day. It is admittedly kind of a soggy spring day, but we finally got some leaves on the trees and that greenery makes all the difference. Although, as is the case with other rainy days, I could really use a nap. But I am not going to take a nap, at least not while I'm on the air with you guys. If you do suddenly get a long stretch of silence with fluttery nasal sounds, okay, you may want to fast forward there. But to start with, we have some items of interest that have occurred in the last week or so. The gaming industry continues to be a carnival of horrors, and I am here to watch it from the third row with you eating a chili dog. Our first item of interest in the last week or so is that Wizards of the Coast, the group that we discussed not too long ago in regards to their massively unpopular decision to attempt to decommission the OGL, the Open Gaming License. This one, I'm not going to do a full recap because, one, I'm not actually a Dungeons & Dragons player, have very little active knowledge about the ecosystem, except that the games presumably feature dungeons and possibly dragons. Although, who knows? I mean, how much mileage did the Elder Scrolls get out of dragons before they finally showed up in Part 5? They could be decorative for all I know. Anyway, not a Dungeons & Dragons expert, not an actual authority on the OGL fiasco. The relevant part, though, is that it was a fiasco. Wizards of the Coast made an extremely unpopular decision. The fan base pushed back. Wizards of the Coast realized that they had made a serious mistake, capitulated to the pressure, and the OGL was saved. And the only cost at the end of the day was a bunch of people realizing that the management at Wizards of the Coast are kind of a bunch of dinks. It was, without exaggerations, a massive PR disaster, one that it would take many years for the company to recover, presuming they managed not to get their feet stuck in another PR scandal. Well, this past week, Wizards of the Coast got their foot stuck in another PR scandal. Okay, so this is basically how it went down. A YouTuber under the name of Old School MTG presumably for Magic the Gathering, the cards that are going to be at the heart of this particular misadventure. Anyway, the YouTuber, his real name Dan Cannon, had recently purchased a new set of Magic the Gathering cards, which he allegedly believed to be a set called March of the Machine. The retailer that he bought them from, who Cannon describes as more of a Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh type of guy, and from outside the card industry, I can't tell if that's an insult or not, apparently mixed up the order with the not yet released March of the Machine Aftermath expansion. Magic the Gathering cards that were not yet supposed to be revealed to the public. Cannon, upon discovering the mix-up, did what any YouTuber would do in this situation if they specialized in Magic the Gathering and did not care about the wrath of Wizards of the Coast. In a series of videos, he revealed about 75% of the upcoming cards to his YouTube audience. Now, in a normal world, this is the part of the story where Cannon would be served a DMCA notice on his YouTube channel, the offending videos would be taken down, and that would be the end of it. But this, my friends, is not the normal world. This is the world of nerd collectibles. It is dark, it is expensive, and it is clammy, and smells a little bit like cabbage. Know what Wizards of the Coast actually did was, now, according to them, they did make a call from an unlisted number to his home, which Cannon did not pick up because it was from an unlisted number. But following that, they sent agents of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, yes, the Pinkertons, the notorious 19th century Union strike busters, and the villains of Red Dead Redemption 2. Wizards of the Coast sent off the Pinkertons to Cannon's house, where he was confronted aggressively regarding the cards and threatened with jail time. Now, again, Wizards of the Coast dispute some parts of this story here, but of course they would, they're dinks. Now, importantly, Wizards of the Coast was certainly within their rights to get a detective to look into the issue, but frankly, from a PR perspective, it maybe wasn't the best idea coming fresh off the heels of their last scandal. particularly if the detective agency you hire is the Pinkertons. When you think of detective agency, you're thinking Humphrey Bogart, Philip Marlowe, Sam Spade. Some hard-drinking guy in a trench coat who makes one-liners when he punches bad guys out. There are a lot of detective agencies out there. When you hire the Pinkerton specifically, you're buying the Pinkerton name. That is, you're deliberately going for the detective with the reputation that, if things go hairy, he might murder a union laborer for you. It's a name that within American history is pretty inextricably linked to intimidation and violence, in much the same way that Wizards of the Coast is slowly becoming inextricably linked to massive PR gaffes. Moving along, our next news item concerns Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which has just been blocked by the CMA. That's right, the Country Music Awards have blocked the Microsoft-Activision merger. Actually, the CMA is the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority, a regulatory body whose job is essentially to scowl at giant mergers like this. Now, unlike the previous criticism of the merger that had been coming out from pretty much every regulatory body since the deal was announced, this is kind of a big one. This is actually an active block on the merger. If it cannot be overcome, then the merger does not happen. What is interesting is the reason for the block. It is surprisingly not the Call of Duty exclusivity alone, or anything that Sony's people have brought up. The merger is being blocked on the grounds that the CMA believes it would give Xbox an unfair advantage in the cloud gaming market. And this is strange for a variety of reasons, but chief among them is that Xbox already pretty solidly has the advantage in the cloud gaming market. And by that I mean it's really the only entity that's attempted cloud gaming at any scale that hasn't fallen flat on its face. Google Stadia pretty famously attempted a cloud-only streaming game ecosystem, got about 8 months in, said nope, and hopped out of that pool. PlayStation Now exists and continues existing. There's that Nvidia thing. The point being that the only thing that Xbox really needs to do to continue dominating cloud gaming services is nothing. At this point, with the current level of competition, adding Call of Duty to the mix is not really going to move that needle all that much. Now, I do feel it important at this juncture to point out that I really don't have a dog in this fight. I don't actually think it's a particularly good thing that two more giant companies form together and control even more of the market, but that's true for any company at this point. Even if I was a diehard Xbox-only fan, I can't honestly think of even a single franchise that Activision puts out that I'm emotionally invested in. I think I actually like more Ubisoft franchises, which is astounding to me. Because objectively, Ubisoft sucks, but there's still Far Cry, and I like Watch Dogs too. With Activision, maybe way back in the day, the original Warcraft games. In any case, Xbox has already signaled its intention to appeal the decision, partially on basis of not being allowed any potential remedies. That is, normally when you get these kind of debates, companies are allowed to discuss potential remedies to specific concerns of the merger, like in regards to the Call of Duty exclusivity, where the remedy was to negotiate long-term non-exclusivity deals with other companies like Nintendo and Nvidia. Of course, the problem at this juncture is that they would have to come up with a remedy that is somehow better than every other cloud gaming company's current strategies, because nobody's succeeding except for Xbox. Whether that'll come down to just handing off the Call of Duty franchise to all cloud gaming services or something more extensive, I guess we'll find out when Microsoft files their appeal. But with that said, it does appear, contrary to the direction this seemed to be going for quite some time, we may very well be looking at a future in which the Activision Blizzard acquisition does not occur, in which case Activision goes back into the loving and gentle arms of Bobby Kotick, and widespread speculation is that Microsoft at that point would go on a buying spree with other companies. On the more expensive side, companies like EA, although it seems like going that route would put them in the same boat with a lot of the concerns they already have with Activision, or possibly medium publishers like Ubisoft or Sega. In any case, however it shakes out, we will eventually, I assure you, come around to a situation where 3 companies own everything. Let's move on. Our final gaming tidbit today concerns the release of Jedi Survivor, the follow-up to the acclaimed single-player Star Wars game Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn. Initial reviews have been extremely positive, with many saying the game is a top contender for Game of the Year at this point. Always good to hear positive news about a new single-player title. With that said, there is one dark cloud, which is that Jedi Survivor's install size has been listed at 150 gigabytes, making this the first AAA title that will take longer to download than to complete. Honestly, at this point, the thing that will drive most of cloud gaming adoption is continuing to push sub-1 terabyte hard drives, while individual games are taking up more than 20% of the space on them. Okay, so that is all the news of interest that I have on me right now, so let's close out today's episode with a few more interesting facts. In fact, in honor of Jedi Survivor's release, let's have a couple little-known Star Wars facts. Although, having said that, as soon as I say anything for a little-known Star Wars facts, there are immediately going to be like 30 people in the comments who already knew it. Because it's Star Wars, yes, but also because they are insufferable. We'll be watching for you. Anyway, did you know that in the early drafts of Star Wars, R2-D2, everyone's favorite bleep-blooping trash can, did not either beep nor bloop, but spoke in complete English sentences? And remarkably, when you look into the actual content of what he said in the original drafts, R2-D2 is, if anything, even more uptight and whiny than C-3PO, which is a real accomplishment. Basically, every time in the script that C-3PO clutches his pearls and goes, "Oh, we can't be doing this, we'll be shut down for sure!" And in the final movie, R2 beeps something back at him that you assume is some sassy rejoinder. In the script, it's actually R2 whining even more. He's one-upping C-3PO's whining. Here are just a few legitimate examples of R2-D2's original English dialogue. I will be performing them here in what I presume is the intended tone of voice. "These life pods aren't for us. It's not right. It's the end. Eject, eject. It's desertion. They'll destroy us. How could this happen? It's not possible. We're not built for this. You're nothing more than a dim-witted, emotion-brained intellectual. Why you were created is beyond my logic systems. Thanks to you, we're deserters, and we'll probably be destroyed on sight. And on top of that, you're going the wrong way. All this filth is getting..." And so on. And, you probably noticed that the wrong way line there was originally C-3PO's in the final film, so you may be thinking to yourself, they switched the personalities. They just had R2 be the effeminate, whiny one, and C-3PO would have been the smart aleck. No, they did switch some of the lines, but 3PO is still every bit as whiny as he is in the final. When you see the treatment of the robots kind of laid out like this, in fact, when you see what stereotypes the robots were reduced to in this script, the apparent anti-droid bigotry that you see displayed in the film takes on a new context, because it turns out Lucas wasn't making commentary on it, he was just flat-out anti-droid racist. Finally, did you know that the filming of the original Star Wars almost contributed to an Earth War? Now, a lot of people know that the original Star Wars, a lot of the desert scenes were filmed in Tunisia. However, if you are in possession of a standard American geographic education, you may not realize that Tunisia shares a border with Libya, and at the time Libya was under the control of Muammar Gaddafi, an individual who historians record was not a gentleman. Reportedly, during the filming of the desert scenes, Gaddafi sent a message to Tunisia's government telling them that they were prepared to enter a conflict with them if one of their military vehicles was not removed from the border. The military vehicle in question was the Jawa Sandcrawler. Fortunately, tensions were able to de-escalate before several of our little person actors in Jawa suits were slaughtered mercilessly. And, okay, that is all the time we have for today. Once again, thank you very much for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a comment. I read every comment, even if my only response is to shake my head sadly. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications button so you will be notified when these go up in the future. And finally, if you want to support us directly, you can go over to our Patreon page. All kinds of goodies there, including comics before anybody else sees them, raw, unfiltered Norm thoughts that you have to read instead of me speaking them to you. For those of you who are patrons, thank you. You make these things possible. Otherwise, thanks for listening along. I am Norm. Hope the rest of your day goes well. Y'all take care. Like the video gamers? We have more such wonders to show you, and all you have to do is subscribe and hit the notifications button.
I mean, you don't have to.
Also consider becoming a patron by following the link to our Patreon page, where we turn your cash into videos, comics, and games using the darkest of dark magics.
But mostly just cash.